What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with UFC will sign with Netflix in 2025? MMA fans are already buzzing about what 2025 will bring in terms of massive championship fights and all-star bouts. But one of the big stories that will unfold in the coming 12 months is what kind of broadcasting deal the UFC is going to land. And before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video to help support the channel. If you're a hardcore fan, you know that the UFC's broadcast deals with ESPN will wrap up by the end of 2025. And as a result, insiders from both the combat sports and finance worlds are already speculating about what kind of deal the promotion will sign. Case in point, recently Bloomberg surveyed media experts and asked them to predict who will land the UFC's broadcasting rights. The number one pick was not one of the old school television networks. It was actually Netflix. Coming in second was Amazon, and third was Disney/ESPN. ESPN is a subsidiary of Disney. The voting margin between Netflix and Amazon was relatively close, but after Disney and ESPN, there was a huge drop in votes for fourth place. Warner Brothers/Discovery. So it goes without saying, this is really interesting to see, but it's not necessarily surprising. Amazon's already been investing heavily in expanding Prime sports options, and Netflix streamed the recent Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. While the bout was widely panned by combat sports fans, at the end of the day, it reportedly drew a massive audience. A lot of people are predicting, however, that the UFC could sign multiple broadcast deals, similar to other major league sports. Dana White's indicated that it could be the case, and recently Ariel Helwani also noted the same on his show. One thing seems certain, the UFC is going to make out like bandits with the new broadcasting deal, which Helwani also acknowledged. I think they're going to make billions off of this. I think that they are not going to share a percentage with the fighters, and I think it'll be fascinating to see how they divide it up. For context, the UFC ESPN deal was signed in 2018 for $1.5 billion. The NBA's new broadcasting deal that was recently signed was for $76 billion. No one is suggesting the UFC is going to get that much money, but all signs are pointing to a multi-billion-dollar deal. Will we see fighter compensation rise considerably if that happens, since there's no indication the fighters will be guaranteed a percentage of the revenue? What do you think? Now let's take a look at Tom Aspinall reveals plans for after retirement. It's likely and hopefully Tom Aspinall won't be hanging up the gloves anytime soon because he's only 31 years old. But the UFC's interim heavyweight champion already has plans for what he's going to focus on once his days as a fighter have wrapped up. Recently, the Manchester Evening News ran a story about the English star, and in it, Aspinall was asked about his post-fighting career. The heavyweight reported that he plans to double down on his YouTube channel, which has already generated over 50 million views. Here's some of what Aspinall had to say. While I'm not a full-time YouTuber, I seem to be rivaling full-time YouTubers in terms of numbers, which is great. I'll take YouTube more seriously once I've finished fighting. I'll do more trips and I'll do more collaborations. I'm going to start doing mini documentaries exploring travel and culture, and I'd love to go places like Dagestan and Thailand to train and vlog. Aspinall also noted that he plans to use his platform to raise more awareness around autism, as one of his sons is autistic. As noted off the top, however, Aspinall likely has plenty of fights to go yet. Of course, we're all hoping that the biggest of his career, a scrap with Jon Jones, will go down next. Speaking of bones, Aspinall is still driving to make that fight a reality. Recently, the Manchester fighter posted this via social media. Here's hoping that the long-discussed and highly anticipated bout finally gets booked for the first half of 2025. Up next, Khalil Rountree opens up on Joe Rogan advice. If you ask most MMA fans, there's absolutely no reason for any fighter to hang their head in shame if they take a loss to Alex Pereira, because Poatan is incredibly dangerous. But recently, Khalil Rountree did acknowledge that there's one thing he really wished he did more of when he fought the light heavyweight king: throw more kicks. Rountree was tapped to fight Pereira at UFC 307 in October after winning 5 straight bouts. The 34-year-old's Muay Thai had been turning heads for years, but his recent run of victories really showcased just how vicious Rountree's striking can be. While Rountree had his moments early on against Pereira, the champion proved to be too much, and he finished the contender in round 4. More recently, Rountree spoke with Fight Energy Films, and while doing so, the light heavyweight acknowledged that Joe Rogan's take on the fight was right. The biggest takeaway from now and the rest of my fighting career is that I'm gonna kick more. I was so mad that I didn't throw as many kicks as I wanted to, and even watching it over again and hearing Joe Rogan say like, oh, Khalil usually kicks more, and I was like, I know the kicks that I did throw did some damage, but I think because of his size, I felt like I had to have both feet planted and throw some more punches. You know, I didn't want to be off balance in any of my attacks. So the main takeaway is kick more. It's a fair point for sure, and it'll be interesting to see who Rountree fights next and whether or not he uses his kicking skills more. Chances are his next opponent is hoping that the answer to that question is no. Now let's discuss UFC updates. Let's take a look at some recent news regarding fight bookings and fighter signings. The UFC's upcoming February 1st card in Saudi Arabia has picked up a very intriguing lightweight bout, with Alex Bahunin from MMA Mania reporting Fares Ziam will battle Mike Davis. Ziam is coming off an emphatic KO of Matt Frivola in September and has won 4 straight. The French fighter's last loss took place in 2022 against Terrence McKinney. Davis also won 4 in a row. In his last bout this past March, the American submitted Nathan Levy with a second-round arm triangle choke. Davis has not lost a fight since 2019, 5 years, when he was tapped out by longtime welterweight contender Gilbert Burns. So, the winner of Ziam Davis could take a big step towards the top 15 of the UFC's lightweight rankings. And the UFC has added another prospect to its roster, as recently Dana White revealed via Instagram that 19-year-old Alice Pereira has signed with the promotion. Not only that, as you can see, the UFC matchmaker, Mitch Maynard, FaceTimed the undefeated bantamweight to let her know.
I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And hey, congratulations, you're in. Welcome to the UFC.
Really?
Congratulations, Merry Christmas.
No, dude. Oh my God. God, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I love it. Merry Christmas. Say hello to you and your family.
Pereira has gone 6-0 since turning pro in 2023. Now, you may be wondering if Pereira is the sister of the UFC champion, Alex Pereira. The answer to that is no. Poatan does have a sister who fights, but that's Aileen Pereira, who's 34 years old. Most recently, she scored a knockout win while competing for karate combat. Muhammad Mokaev sends a message to Manel Kape. Muhammad Mokaev and Manel Kape's bitter feud made headlines multiple times this year, but it looks like Mokaev is ready to move on from their intense rivalry. Earlier this year, it was reported that the flyweights threw down in a nasty incident at the UFC's Performance Institute. Then, ahead of their bout at UFC 304 in July, Mokaev was accused of sucker punching Kape. Not only that, it was alleged that Mokaev pretended he wanted to squash their beef and that he asked to take a picture with Kape before all hell broke loose. Well, although Mokaev defeated Kape at UFC 304, the UFC opted to release him following the victory. Dana White acknowledged that the incidents with Kape had played a factor, and he also reported the staff didn't want to deal with the 24-year-old anymore. More recently, Mokaev revealed via his YouTube channel that he's apologized to Kape for the part he played in their bitter feud. Even after all this recently, 1 month ago, I sat down and think about all the situation. I messaged him, I apologized for whatever happened between me and you. He didn't reply, but from my heart, I feel free. Until then, I was holding something, I just have to let it go, because at the end of the day, you can't just keep walking around being angry about it. It happened. Now, I just move on. I just decided to message him. It's his choice now. Could this get back to the UFC brass? And might it impact whether they want to bring Mokaev back? Maybe. The Dagestani fighter is coming off a quick submission win over Joe Vincent So at a Brave CF event earlier this month. The latter did take the fight on super short notice, but given that the UFC is quickly running out of contenders for flyweight champion Alexander Pantoja, and if Mokaev has a new mindset in terms of his out-of-cage actions, you'd think this is certainly a possibility. Mokaev has been criticized at times for his wrestling and grappling-centric approach, but despite his UFC release, he is widely considered to be one of the best flyweights in the world. But what do you think? Could we see Mokaev return to the octagon in 2025? And if so, how many wins will he need to score before he's given a title shot? 1, 2? Fighter furious for being held hostage by PFL. One of the greatest fighters to never compete in the UFC, Patricio Pitbull, has ramped up his efforts to get released by the PFL. If you're more of a light MMA fan and don't watch other promotions, you may not know that Pitbull is widely considered to be the greatest Bellator fighter ever. Not only did he win Bellator's featherweight title 3 times, he also took the lightweight belt from Michael Chandler in jaw-dropping fashion. If you haven't seen Pitbull fight, do yourself a favor and change that fact. Fast forward to today, and it's not clear when we'll see Pitbull fight next. When the PFL bought Bellator, the promotion announced that it intended to keep Bellator up and running, but many of Bellator's top fighters have been vehemently calling on the PFL to book them fights. In the case of Pitbull, however, he's had enough, and he's been actively calling on the PFL to release him. Case in point, recently, the 37-year-old directed these posts at PFL executives Pete Murray and Don Davis. My management team had a call with Pete Murray tonight, and despite making it clear my desire to leave and some of my reasons, even noticing my contract is up in May, PFL won't let me go and intends to hold me there against my will. You say you're fighters first, but decided to keep me hostage, Don Davis and Pete Murray. You know I want to pursue something else but want me to fight in April and intend to force other clauses of my contract after it's up. How is that the best for me? It's really absurd and disappointing that I have to come on X to voice all this. Do the right thing and release me, Pete Murray, Don Davis. I was a Bellator MMA fighter, and it no longer exists. The promotion is gone, and so should I. I haven't fought since March. They want me to fight in April. Over a year of my life and career that I'll never get back. Why force me to stay? Focus on those that want to fight for PFL and let me move on. Could we see the PFL pivot and release Pitbull? Maybe, but it seems kind of unlikely, as that could prompt other notable fighters to also call for their releases. While Patricio Pitbull is not a mainstream name here in North America, he's one of the biggest stars outside of the UFC. Here's hoping the PFL finally keeps Pitbull busy, or they agree to release him. There's no doubt a lot of hardcore MMA fans would love to see Pitbull throw hands in the octagon. Chris Curtis exposes Roman Kopylov for spying on his team during their camp. Curtis wrote on Instagram calling out Roman by writing, "Couple weeks ago, 2 Russians show up looking to be part of the team. After 2 weeks, they vanish as soon as Kopylov comes to town and are now training together. Scumbag move, Kopylov." The 2 men can be seen pictured at Chris Curtis training camp and then next to Roman just days later. Do you think Roman sent spies to Chris Curtis's training camp? Let us know in the comments.